like it put pressure on the nerve and then pushed the tooth up. So it's
Oh God.
essentially pulling it out. It was terrible.
Oh no, that sounds fucking horrific. That sounds like something out of a fucking nightmare. Like my nightmare
Yeah.
would be like that happening to my teeth.
Yeah, it was horrible. So I ended up lancing it, and that was like the greatest pain relief ever. And then I got on antibiotics.
Mine was when my the abscess created a like a massive fucking bubble and the bubble burst. Oh my God. I felt like I literally like transcended into heaven or something. It was that's it was like the most incredible feeling in my life.
Yeah, for
Um
sure.
cool, man. So we are ready to stream and we are live, man. Welcome. All
What's up, bud? How you doing?
right. Yeah, we're already live, so we're rocking and rolling. So everybody, welcome, welcome. We're back on Vibe Fridays after a lot of traveling. I'll be doing some traveling next week also. But today, Mario is going to walk us through after some incredible recovery for anybody that just joined in. Mario has been sick. He's now better. We were just talking about his incredible recovery and lack of pain. But glad you're feeling better, man. But today we're going to go over how to create an MCP server. So a lot of you probably don't know what an MCP server, probably do know what an MCP server is. Regardless of which, today would be a little bit of a foundational education. And I'll kind of like dumb it down a little bit because like it took me a little while to kind of understand what it means. But MCP servers are going to be the future of connections. And I think the analogy that somebody came up with me, it's like the USB ports of what ports brought to like the PC, which I thought was
Yeah,
a really good idea.
really good.
Yeah, and I think I'm
So
gonna
the
age myself if we talk about it because if we talk about like before, like many moons ago, when you first got a computer, there would all these be weird, wacky connections in the background, and they were
Yep.
massive. They were like the size of your fingers, and every time you wanted to connect a printer or you want to connect like a video card,
Oh, dude, and you bend one of those pins by accident because
it was
you're like
game
trying to
over.
get it on the back of the computer, and it'll never work again. Like,
That's right. That's right. And then I learned later on that if you remove one of them, it still works. So, but that being said, so we're gonna go over what an MCP server is, what you're gonna need it for, and today Mario is gonna start walking us through how to create one because Mario is now just so we're gonna give everybody kind of like a sneak peek. Well, not a sneak peek, but a sneak talk about it. We are going. Well, not we. Mario is gonna be launching a software that is gonna change the way you talk to CRMs and I can't divulge too much, but we are knowing that is pretty soon going to be launching. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And if you guys haven't known, you probably see the pictures floating around. Mario, myself, and a couple of other really talented individuals are going to hold a 3-day workshop in something called AI Unleashed. It's going to be in January. Pre-sales are going to start tomorrow. So I know there's only 12 spots for the preliminary pricing of the tickets. So for anybody jumping on that early, it's going to be a 3-day workshop. Literally workshop meaning you're coming in there and you're working, where you're going to have me, myself, Mario, Fur Patel, Michael Reimer, all people that have been on this show, kind of helping you and walking you through 3 days of nonstop like building of stuff for you and your business. So it's definitely going to be something you want to check out. But without further ado, somebody's funny. I hate to admit, but I remember those days. The days of old PCs was definitely, man, you gotta, even the monitors, man, used to weigh like 40 pounds just trying to get a monitor working. But anyway,
oh,
so, yeah. So Mario, walk us through, man. What is an MCP? Why are we going to do this? Why is it important? Let's talk about that.
yeah. So kind of the way that I found myself explaining this to Johan and a few other people because I've been running demos on my new software, which is called Talk to My CRM, and it's an MCP interface and server. It's a multifaceted platform, but what I ended up explaining is like you drive a car, right? You know?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't drive a car. I used to drive a car. I
Oh,
love
I didn't
working
know
on a car.
that. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I actually had to get my license reinstated today. It lapsed because I haven't driven in like 4 years. But um, what I found myself explaining is like back in the day when I did have a car, or when I'm talking about like my girlfriend Danny's car or something like that, um, you go to a mechanic, right? And you bring your car to the mechanic, and you, the human, are interfacing with this mechanic. And in this context, the AI is the mechanic. Okay. So the mechanic can tell you basic information about vehicles. It can tell you how to change a battery. It can do a variety of different educational tasks, right? So it's a knowledge resource, essentially an answer engine. Okay. And then I bring in a Kia Forte or Hyundai Sonata or a BMW i3 or something like that, right? And that car, the mechanic needs to work on that car. And in order to work on that car, the mechanic breaks out a manual. And that manual is an instruction guide on how to communicate with the car's computer, how to change, the tires, what pressure they're supposed to be at, all these different things. So we've got the human interacting with the mechanic interacting with the car. But in order to interact with the car, which the car is the platform, so like that's high level in this context, it needs that instruction guide and that manual. That instruction guide and manual is the MCP server. So what it's doing is you're talking to the mechanic's looking at the guide is telling the mechanic, hey, you can change the tires, the battery, you can fill the gas tank, you can change the oil, and here's how you do it. And then the mechanic works on the car. That's essentially a very rudimentary understanding of how MCP servers function. And
Yeah, let me give you let me give other people like a different analogy. So that's a fantastic analogy, right? I love it. I think that's really, really good. Here's another analogy to think about it, right? A lot of you guys are already familiar about AI. You've seen us use AI, you've seen us kind of communicate, and you've been seeing us connect what we call APIs. Now, you got to understand, if I wanted to use high levels APIs, each part of high level, let's say calendars has its own API. So calendars has an API and a call and a very specific set of instructions for just calendars. Then there's very specific instructions and API calls for social posting. Then there's one for email. Then there's one for sites. Then there's one for contacts. There's all these different endpoints. So altogether, it's about 200, 300 something endpoints, and it's consistently growing. So if you wanted to connect by yourself without using like a third party tool like Zapier or Make or Pabbly or any of these other things or NAN, you would literally have to create your own platform that then in turn connects to the like each of these endpoints. So you're talking about 250 different things that you had to have to configure about, and then you would have to understand how they would work back and forth. Well, you come in with an MCP. The MCP server is the list of all the commands, all the endpoints, everything that you ever need in the software, and it holds the instructions right on the server. So if you're using AI goes to the MCP, it receives all the endpoints and things it could do. It starts communicating with it, and now it's connecting to everything that all that you need. So instead of having to create all these crazy like ridiculous endpoints, the MCP server is like the library that gives you access to all these different things, but not only access, it lets you in the door and then it does it already for you. So then you don't have to worry about all the configuration. You do that in the MCP server. So imagine if you have a software or you create a software or you're trying to tap into a software, and instead of having connecting all these little different endpoints, like going crazy, you connect an AI in the middle. The AI then connects to this MCP, and then the AI decides what endpoints and what things it needs in order for it to function. So just think of it in an overly simplified, crazy fast process to get your like interconnections completely up. And that's what it's all about, which is pretty wild. So what Mario's done, he's created an interface that does this already, but now we're going to show you how you can create one in this. Now, remember, this is a little bit more advanced because we're getting into coding and we're doing all this, but I want to make sure you kind of understand a different perspective, right? He'd give you the car analogy. I'm giving you like, again, the different situations of what you would normally have to do if you had to do this yourself. And now we're going to actually go about creating it. So go ahead, Mario.
yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit more today on the kind of fundamentals of creating an MCP before we actually get into creating one, because that process is fairly extensive, and I'm going to put some slides together that really explain it. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of the architecture of what you need to be able to build an effective MCP server. So this is, can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
You're on mute. Perfect. So this is what an MCP essentially looks like on the inside, right? So you have your N8N, you have OpenAI or Claude, which are MCP clients. When the person asks, who is my most recent, when the MCP is first connected, like you were saying, it immediately basically downloads all of the information to Claude or OpenAI or whatever your MCP client of choice is, and then OpenAI or Claude or your MCP client of choice makes the decision on what tools it needs to call, and it actually reports back on what tools it's calling. It's kind of cool. You can watch it do different things you as you interface with it. But the way that it works is when the MCP client calls the MCP server, you have to create the actual MCP server itself is really simple. And I'll pull up a GitHub example, and we can kind of go through what's called fast MCP, which is a Python-based MCP service for creating MCP. So this actually runs you through the entire process, and I'll drop this link, Nuno, in the Zoom chat for you so that you can post it on the group. This is just one example of an MCP repository. And what it does is you essentially build out what are called tool calls. And inside of your tool calls and your descriptions, you're giving the AI context on how to perform those API calls. So me personally, like a lot of MCPs are built in what's called Node.js, which is fine. However, MCPs need to operate swiftly, and they need to operate with as little overhead as possible. And they're very much a logical entity. Like it's not a web service where you need to render or really process any information whatsoever. The MCP is almost like a ferryman on a boat, in that it is carrying it is taking the instruction and formatted output from the AI and sending that to the API endpoint that you need to call to perform that specific action. So a good starting point is this fast MCP repository. This gives you all of the information about how to create clients, how to create servers, how to apply context. Context is absolutely critical for your MCP server. So you really need to plan what it's going to be called. You need to plan each individual tool call. You need to plan what the descriptions of those tool calls are. So here's an example of a weather MCP, right, that supports asking it for the weather forecast and the weather answer questions. And you can set up that MCP basically just by cloning this repository, and it comes pre-baked. And then you edit the API endpoints from there. The complex part, though, when it comes to building an MCP server is really the authentication component and making sure that all of your API calls match what the server is expecting. So let's break down an example of one really quick. Let me pause my screen share and jump into another repository. what we're going to do is look at some examples of high-level MCP tool calls.
Yeah, and
So,
Bev asked a really good question. She goes, I believe I'm charged for every API call when using an API to connect. Is that correct? And second question is it less expensive to use an MCP to connect?
you're not charged for every API call. So high level does not charge you per API call.
How do they charge? Do you know?
They don't charge you at all for API calls.
So if I'm running my own private integration or I'm running my own API in the marketplace, there is no charge for API calls.
That's correct.
That's insane. And then so obviously the MCP would be be the same price because it's free. So it would work the same way.
Yeah, so the MCP server itself is going to either live on your computer or it's going to live in the cloud. I prefer cloud-hosted remote MCPs over local MCPs, mainly because like my MCP that I'm setting up right here in this diagram is able to um, be used by many people versus local MCPs, which are only usable by like your computer itself, right? So let's say that I create an MCP server on my computer locally, and then I have an N8N cloud instance. I can't connect the N8N cloud instance easily to my computer, nor would it be logical to connect it into my computer to then proxy the request into the actual API server itself. So what I do is I prefer these cloud-hosted MCPs. This is an example of an MCP tool called definition, where you see I register the calendar tools with the MCP instance. I talk about getting appointments for the contact, so I'm setting context for what it's doing. Here's an example of like creating a new appointment, right? So remember how I said you had to set context for things? Well, the AI also needs context to be able to provide the MCP the right format input to be able to use it effectively. So this one for the create new appointment says important, use time zone aware ISO format for times to avoid slot no longer available errors. Central time, Eastern time, Pacific time, right? So I would draw definitions based on, like if I wanted to add additional time zones, I would draw definitions for additional time zones describe additional time zones into this MCP tool call. So everything in here is passing what looks like raw API call data into the server, but it's being translated by the MCP engine. So the MCP engine, while it is simultaneously an instruction manual, it is also a translation guide for the AI to the API server. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in kind of layman's terms, like you said, I think this is the mechanic thing you were talking about. Um, so I'm gonna try to hold, like, we want to make sure you guys understand the concept, because if you guys understand the concept, this all starts making sense. And then when you start building it or watching us start building it, you have to kind of understand like where we're going. So think of it like this right now, right? Let's make believe you wanted to use, let's say, high level with like, let's say, Flowdesk. It's two separate systems, or Titan server, or whatever crazy other third party app that you need to use, because high level probably doesn't have that functionality, right? What you would do is you would normally use Zapier or Make to basically take whatever you have in here on this side, which is high level, bring it to like a central area that does all the interpretation, allows you to connect both things, but then you would still have to build all the different automations and things you would want to happen, but just to get the information on the other side, because it has to be kind of, structured. You have to create a path for the information to get to the thing, and then for the information to get back to high level, right? So the MCP server, think about it as the AI is going to the MCP server. The MCP server's got already all the connections. All you have to do though is it's going to give the AI the instructions, so the AI knows what to do. But then the AI is figuring out of all the different things it can do, which ones does it need to do now? So if, for instance, if I'm using NAN and I want to grab the contact information in the example that Mario did, it's literally going to that MCP server and going, well, what do I have available that I can use? And can I get this contact? And it'll probably have instructions just like you're seeing right here, written in the language that the AI and the computers understand, that basically says, yes, I have the ability of pulling contacts. Here's how I'm going to do it. Grab your like, is that what you want? Yes, boom. It grabs the content, then brings it back, and it brings it back in a format that high level or whoever's asking understands. So this is why these things are so powerful, because you got to think about before, let's make believe you were an application, you were trying to build like an app. You would have to connect all these endpoints to other apps just to make your app work. Well, now you could just connect a lot of these apps to local or mobile MCPs. And now not only does your app have more ability to do more with that tool if they have an MCP available, but now instead of having to waste time connecting God knows how many endpoints, 200, and configuring them all both backwards and forwards, you now just send it to a centralized MCP and then boom, it kind of does its thing automatically without a lot of interference, and the AI kind of figures it out. This is why programming and launching apps in the next several years, people are doing it in the like super quick, because all this stuff is already all being figured out. And this is why this is such a critical play in like the future of AI, the future of app building, and everything else.
Well, and one of the things that I think is really important to mention as well, Nuno, is that um, you can daisy chain MCPs together as well. So let's say that I have, like, I want to create an orchestra of software agents and create a virtual assistant that does, my task management and a variety of other things for me, right? Um, what you would do is you would leverage you'd leverage multiple MCPs in the same
Instance,
agent
right? Yeah.
instance, right, of the AI. So the same MCP client can connect to multiple MCPs. So you can tell it, for example, like, I want to add the contact for Patel into my CRM, and then I need to create a task or you could have a pre-system prompted thing that says every time you create a contact, create a task in ClickUp that's follow up with this contact within 7 days. So it can actually orchestrate using thinking tools. It can orchestrate multiple different and create agentic workflows out of the MCP. So this is an example of an MCP in practice. So ignore the fact that my logo is missing, because it's annoying that I have to put the logo in there every single time. I need to fix that. But let's say that I want to say, what date did I add for Patel to my CRM? And it's going to think, and hopefully it's going to work, because I'm in the middle of refactoring the application. But Fur was added on August 24th, 2025. So this is showing when Fur was added. Now I want to say, what is Fur Patel's email address? I need to send him an email about the AI Unleashed event. It's going to call my API, and in roughly a second, it'll return back his email address. And I'm now able to really quickly fire off an email. But the cool thing about an MCP is that I can connect this to G Suite, I can connect it to Google Drive, to Gmail, to high levels email system, the SMS system. I can send out marketing campaigns, I can send out email blasts. There's really all manner of things that I can do with, and this is an MCP client in and of itself. So I essentially built, as part of the layer, you have n8n MCP client, Claude and OpenAI, which are MCP clients, and then the Talk to My CRM platform, which is also an MCP client. And all of them authenticate and communicate with this MCP server in the center, which then communicates with high levels API in that game. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think it does. But I hope you guys are just kind of seeing what we're trying to expose you guys to. Yeah, it's Can you make that just a little bit bigger? I think people want to see like the bottom part. Yeah, right there. So it will speed up and it will simplify and give more abilities to you being able to connect any of your automations, any of your softwares that you are creating, high level, everything to other softwares in a much easier and practical format at a very, very low to little no cost. And that's something that you kind of want to go. And you really become the overall exception if you start learning how to not only work with the MCPs, which we're going to show you and which we have been showing you on the show, but more importantly, like to Mario's point, that we actually start designing it and start helping you build your own. So conceptually, when we're looking at like right now, right, and we did it on the previous show where we connected to the high level MCP server, we showed you that it had 21 endpoints and we were using NAN to basically grab contact information, the list, and everything else. We have videos on it. You guys can go ahead and check it out. They're adding more endpoints, again, throughout the year. I've already asked them to kind of put the ones that we would want, like calendar, social media, blogging, email, so we can write emails, we can write blog posts, all using AI, and then have it automatically post and do its thing inside a high level. They have to give us the endpoints first in the MCP in order for us to do this, but this is where the future is going. So if for everybody that's using Lovable or you're doing vibe coding and everything else, you having the ability of connecting to an MCP server and then doing it through your, let's say, an AI, you are going to significantly increase one, the time that you get that completed in, and two, the capabilities of the AI or your app, because now instead of connecting to only one thing in a different software, it can connect to like 30, 15, it can do all that. Bev asked the questions. Can you explain how a webhook fits into an API in an MCP world to connect for automations? I thought that's a really good question. Like
Say
how would
that
we
one
use
more time. Just
could
so I
you
understand.
explain how a webhook fits into the API MCP world to connect for automations?
So webhooks are every API call, and I say this with a grain of salt because there are exceptions, but for the most part, most REST API calls, which are how applications communicate with each other on a regular basis, are all really webhooks. They are a type of, like, a webhook is kind of a pseudonym for a post request to another system. And a post request meaning that you're sending data, you're picking up the phone and calling Nuno and saying, "Hey Nuno," and Nuno says, "Hey, what's up?" And it's like, "I've got some information to you, transmitting now." And you say, "Okay, thank you, received." That's a webhook, essentially.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
technically, an API call is usually, yeah, to your point. Like I was always confused myself on it because technically, when you're building an API, you're using the same kind of webhook information, except that you're going to a point and you're adding the code in the API versus in the webhook itself, right? Because the webhook is going out securely.
not necessarily. I mean, like, if you inspect a browser network call in high level, for example. So you right click and when you right click, you click network and then you refresh your page. There's going to be all of this stuff that pops up. And pretty much all of those are API calls. And the and or webhook because they're realistically the same thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's a pseudonym for a webhook is a pseudonym for an API call, but when you say API call, people's brains explode. So typically you just call it webhook because it's an outbound data sending, but you can use webhooks with different protocols to get data and other things. So that's why I was saying it's a little bit of a misnomer slash like almost like a pseudonym, but
But
by
you
that
wouldn't
same
really
token,
necessarily use them with MCPs, right?
no, you wouldn't use a web. Well, the MCP itself is going to fire a webhook to high level's API server, or an API call to high level API server. They're the same thing. Like they're literally identical calls, and they contain a payload of data that's in JSON format, which we've talked about on calls before. It's just a structured internet language format, essentially, right? Machine language format. And so the webhook carries with it an authentication header of some type and a payload. Or it contains an authentication header and says, hey, Nuno, give me some information. I'm calling you about this thing. And you say, oh, here's your information. You give it back to me. So they're both technically webhooks, both technically API calls. So it's easy to get confused, but once you understand it at a fundamental level, which is that they're the same thing, it's a lot less confusing when someone says API because it literally just means a webhook with a payload.
Got it. So it's interchangeable, basically, but yeah, not into almost like two separate. We want to almost treat it like two separate things then. But in reality, it is kind of using it similarly, but a little bit different. Long story short of it, you would probably not ever have to use a webhook again if you can connect to something SME, and it would be far easier once you have
Yeah.
the MCP actually sort of connected.
I mean, what you're doing is like with a standard, people aren't going to go build MCP clients for themselves, right?
Yeah.
And not everybody's capable of using N8N or wants to use N8N, but everyone loves ChatGPT's interface. Everyone loves Claude's interface or Gemini or whatever your AI flavor is that you prefer, right? And you'll notice that in like, let me pull up Claude really quick. You'll notice that in Claude, it has Google Drive connector, Gmail connector, Google Calendar connector, GitHub connector, and then I have a custom connector down here called Alibot.ai. And that's my custom MCP. And it's as simple as dropping a URL right in here, or which in this case, it would actually be this URL. Dropping this URL in, hitting add, and authenticating. It's as simple as that. That's how you connect an MCP to Claude. And then I can just go to new chat and say, hey, I would like to know information about Fur Patel. And this will work fundamentally the same way as this does, but this is its own standalone MCP system and AI system because it has some additional flavors in it. Like I added some ingredients for a knowledge base. I have more MCP endpoints than anybody else. 30 currently deployed and fully QA'd. I have another 170 in testing. So by the time I'm done with it, like high levels MCP is already obsolete. This further makes it obsolete. Because this MCP server that like I've essentially coded and I showed you kind of what the tool calls look like over here. This is all faster, more efficient, and totally free for the public. And the way that I did it was by really basically feeding high levels API documentation against that initial GitHub repository that we looked at, which was the fast MCP server. So I fed it information from GitHub about the fast MCP server, and then I fed it high levels API documentation and said, create the translation layer for this MCP server. That's how hard it is to write an MCP. It's actually really simple. The hard part is getting the authentication correct. And that was the part that probably took me the longest.
Which makes a lot of sense, but you guys get it, right? So the goal is to kind of like open up your world to really get you guys to understand, and then we're going to start building our own. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to this because this is going to get very complex, but it's going to give you the ability to do that. And again, we'll keep it short today. We don't want to overwhelm. This is a lot that you're going to have to go back and like digest a little bit. This is going to be part one. Then we're moving to part two when we actually start building it out because. Like I said, this is definitely not for the faint of heart, and we want to make sure you guys are ready. And more importantly than anything else is like, this will 100% give you the advantage for anything that you're going to be able to do, whether it's NAN related, because if you're connected to MCPs through NAN, you're already winning because you're going to limit the amount of things you're going to have the MCP do. And we already, like I said, we have already tons of videos that I connect to the MCPs, but this is going to start us down the path of how to build our own MCP servers. And honestly, this is education you usually have to pay for, and we're going to give you that education here for free. That being said, we are teasing Mario's big launch of his software that I think you guys are absolutely going to love. I've been watching him build it, which has been an amazing treat in all of itself. So you guys are gonna actually see it. So I can't wait until that releases. And again, AI Unleashed is going to be an event that we're all going to be attending, and it's going to be an actual workshop where we're going to help you build your thing, and you're going to walk away with tons of assets. You're going to see more of that coming on. I will tell you that the early bird pricing is going to be really early bird, so you're going to want to jump on that. And I think they only have 12 available. So the second you start seeing advertisement for it tomorrow, I would jump on this thing right away. It's like some of the most brilliant minds in one room for 3 straight days. And for anybody that knows any of them, that any of the people that I mentioned, like Reamer, myself, for Patel, we're probably one of the most generous people you'll ever get when it comes to giving you everything that we have and ensuring that you get the most out of your out of everything that we offer. So it's definitely going to be a live event you're not going to want to miss. So again, be on the lookout for that. We're just teasing you up a little bit here, but there's only going to be about 12 spots for the early bird, and I do definitely know that the prices are going to go up. We do have a pretty high expectation that a lot of people are going to come. But yeah, stay on top, make sure you do it, and then go from there.
So something that I'd be interested to know from the group, we have a pretty active group of people commenting on this YouTube video and Facebook. What MCP server do you want us to build? Is the better question, because I've already constructed one for high level, so for me that's not a challenge, right? The key requirements are
Well, I know it's not a challenge for you. It's so funny. You're like, it's not a challenge for you. It is going to be a massive challenge for everybody else.
well,
So
what I'm saying is like what I'd love to hear from the crowd is like pet exec would be an example of an MCP that doesn't exist, right? It's a very niche pet specific software that has API endpoints that would be really cool to be able to like talk to it about, when's the dog's vaccinations due, or things like that. So like if anyone has any ideas, comment on this video around it has to have an API, an open API, and then I have to be able to get an account for free or know someone with an account. So if you're interested, comment on this video, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. Nuno and I will track it, and we'll maybe come up with some ideas. And then next Friday, we'll actually pick an MCP live to build. But before we hop off, really quick, I wanted to see if you had like 2 more minutes. Just want to show you something super cool and kind of tease a little bit further.
oh yeah, by all means, yeah, but absolutely. Let's show us what
So,
you got.
so I gave you guys a little bit of a taste with uh, this platform, the chat UI, right? And really
And just
the
to be
way
clear,
that
everybody, this is the software that's about to release. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of what you're looking at. And I'm going to give it a little presence because maybe you missed it. What he created is something that actually talks to the CRM itself in an AI format. And as you can see, it says talk to my CRM. He asked a question through AI to his to his CRM, and the CRM came back and answered. So it literally makes the CRM like a living like thing that you can communicate with. So yeah, like I need you guys to settle in on that thought process because it is genius in so many different ways, but just want to make sure you guys are understanding what took place. He literally did not go to screens, did not go anything else, literally had a conversation with the bot of whether or not like a contact, what year the contact came into existence inside his CRM. He literally legit talked to his CRM. So I want to make sure you all understand what happened there. Like that is bananas. But anyway, go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the tee up. One of the challenges that people face with high level is that it's really overwhelming when you sign it. And you don't, you really only perform actions against contacts, opportunities, calendars, and conversations, right? You don't really go into your automations once they're set. You do some in the social media planner, you do some in the email marketing stuff. But most people start in the foundational 4 pillars of high level. And Varun Vivarian, who is, or Varavian, however you pronounce his last name, one of the co-founders, the technical co-founder of High Level, and Shivam Tiwari, who was like employee number one and is our head of product at High Level, and I were all having a conversation last year at Summit. So we're about a year away from this conversation. And then Varun and I again had this conversation in the UK or Australia, I can't remember which one it was, about how I was Australia, how his vision of CRMs was a CRM that you never log into, and a CRM that just integrates with your daily life and everything like that, right? And I was thinking about it, and part of this challenge that I'm trying to solve is like, I remember being a sales guy in my engineering field. I remember being a road warrior. And when I was on the road constantly, I oftentimes would find myself texting and driving. And that's obviously not safe, right? This was before like texting and driving was against the law, still not safe, don't ever do it. But I find myself like literally in Salesforce.com's app on my phone, driving down the road, trying to pull up a contact's information to call the facility that I need to get entrance to, or like get through gate security, get the gate code, stuff like that, right? And so what I did with this software is I took it one step further and didn't just build an entirely new chat system. I actually re-engineered voice and a voice system to create a perpetual personal assistant via desktop and mobile apps. So both of those will be coming out here shortly. Again, everyone, this is still in beta, so forgive a little bit of choppy. I haven't done any fine tuning on the voice, but this is really the gem kind of North Star feature of the app itself. So let's take it for a spin. Hey, can you tell me the email address for Fur Patel?
It looks like I couldn't find any contact information for someone named Mattel in the system. If you have more details, like a last name or...
So I've got to perfect the speech to text. It hates Fur's name, but let's try this one. Can you tell me the email address for Sarah Montana?
It seems like your message was cut off. Could you please provide the full... Sarah Montana's email address is Sarah Wellness Works. If you need...
So it's got a little bit of fine tuning on the voice side, but the AI layer and the MCP are the critical part. The voice piece is super easy for me. It's literally if I go into my, oops, wrong one. If I go into my admin dashboard that I built out, I can go into my voice settings and I can tune all of the voices and things like that. But that is essentially the nuts and like that. This is the gold piece, because this actually runs for up to 8 hours at a time. And so you can literally just open this, minimize the tab, and just say, hey, Ollie, or hey, Harley, can you tell me what Sarah Montana's email address is? And it will automatically pick up your voice. It will register that it's you, and then it will give you back the information you're looking for. And you just leave that open all day in a browser tab or a mobile app on your phone. You never actually have to chat with anything or type anything at all. So if you're blind or you have some sort of visual impairment, you have a physical handicap that doesn't allow you to type easily, now you have the full power of High Level at your fingertips with just your voice.
And again, you could talk to it and you can also type it. And that's going to be a pretty big, kind of like game changer. But again, name any other software out there that you can talk to it and it's going to grab all your information inside of your CRM and do other things, because it has the ability, I believe, of like booking appointments, grabbing contact information, communicating with your contacts, sending info in your contacts, looking at like all these different things. And this is like the beginning part of it. And just like I mentioned before, the cool part about everything that we do is as long as the connection is open to high level and high level gives us the ability of doing that, we then in turn can do the same. And I can tell you that I'm talking pretty big with the developers. I was talking to Kron, a couple of other individuals that are running these crazy departments to try to get these things all launched. You will be at level up in October. And by the way, me and Mario are going to be there. You will be able to then have these MCPs kind of work, and they're working very, very diligently in trying to get us more endpoints and trying to give us the endpoints that make a lot more sense to help us automate for our agencies, for ourselves, for our clients, whatever it is. But again, now being imagine taking that one step further is that as many new endpoints as high level decides to get, Mario's going to come over here and is going to give us that many more endpoints to talk to our CRM with. So it's just going to create a really, really robust system. I'm actually pretty excited to see it. I'll definitely be buying. So
Pretty too. That's the other thing is the MCP itself, not the voice layer and not the chat layer, but the MCP that I created that is uniquely different from everyone else's MCP, because you don't need a private integrations token. You don't need to specify your location ID in the prompt. It's all a one-click install in the marketplace for Talk to My CRM. And it has all 200 endpoints available to it.
Even ones that high level does not have only available, because right now the MCP server for high level is only 21. So
I have 200 available. So
love it. Well, again, folks, it's always a pleasure to be out here. Hope you guys can't wait to see it. Again, be on the lookout for the event. It's the only one where you're going to get us all live in a workshop, teaching you a bunch of stuff. And again, a lot of the buddies that I've had on the show, Fur and I will probably be talking at some point in the show, and Mario and I will keep on giving you guys updates of where we are with that. But it's all the way in January, so plenty of time, and it'll be a good time to visit Cancun, Mexico, because I believe that's where it's located, which I don't think anybody would have a problem with.
yeah, I'm super excited, man. Let's go.
I know. So with that being said, I want to keep wishing Mario a little bit of a recovery, hoping it feel a little bit better. But we'll see you guys on the next live, where we're going to start building this process. And again, leave in the comments what MCP server you guys would like, and then that's the one we'll start building, as long as, again, we have access and so forth. So with that being said, thank you, everybody, and we will see you in the next one. 1 second. Barely, I can turn this off. All right, we're not going off yet. All right, my friend. I will see you soon.